Hi there, this is Jen, and thanks so much for stopping by today. Today I am creating mini cards with tissue paper. This is an old technique that's been around for quite a while. This is the normal supermarket, packaging tissue paper. This is not bleeding tissue paper. I have a video for that though that I did quite a while ago, and I'll link it if you're interested in that. But this is a super fun project, and so I thought I'd go ahead and share. But first, my son has created a little bit of art, and he hasn't shown it on my channel for a while, so he wanted me to show you what he's created. So this first one is a tree and a snake, and then he's got two little bees. And then he has this sailboat in the ocean. And of course, I love any opportunity that he comes in my craft room and creates art instead of playing video games. So those were super awesome pictures. So to start out, I have a ton of white tissue paper, and so I'm just using white in this video, though you can certainly use patterned tissue paper and kind of do a little bit of the same things, especially with really beautiful patterns. You can just make cards out of those, kind of like the napkin card making. So I went ahead and I cut my paper into strips. I had paused my video and then didn't realize that I wasn't recording. So I went ahead and did this portion already, but I wanted to show this because I do use these pieces in several cards. And for this one I use the distress sprays, and I will show another few pieces that I created kind of the same way so that you get an idea of how I did this one. But I'm going to go ahead and grab some stamps and stamp all over this. So I just grabbed whatever I had. And I'm using the VersaFine Clair in the Nocturne to stamp these up. And the really cool thing about this technique is that you can just take a plain piece of white tissue paper and just stamp flowers all over it, or whatever stamps you have. And I just think that in itself is just really beautiful. You can also take a full sheet of tissue paper and stamp all over it and use it as a piece of wrapping paper. I think that would be really cool. So I'm going to go ahead and just keep stamping on these pieces. I make 2 cards out of this, but if I don't use it in this video, I will put it in my little collage basket of paper strips and use it at some point for some sort of collage. So I went ahead and trimmed these down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 sizes. And then I'm taking a white piece of cardstock, and I am going to be using, for most of the cards, this Liquitex matte medium, and that is what's going to allow the tissue paper to adhere. You can use Mod Podge, you can use gel. I do use gel on some of the other cards in the video, but any kind of medium like that you have. You can also use regular glue. I would just, if you were going to use regular glue, I would just brush it on. And the beauty of using tissue paper is that you have like built-in texture. So the little ripples that it doesn't, where it doesn't lay down perfectly, is just gives some really beautiful texture to your card without even trying. So this last piece that I did, I had set it down on this card panel that had glue on it, and of course it stuck, and so I ended up ripping that. So to fix it, I went ahead and I grabbed some, I believe that's peacock feathers distress ink, and I'm just going to blend a little bit across the back of the background so that those areas that there are holes, the ink will show through and it won't look so bad. And so for this one, I'm trying to get a lot of wrinkles, and so I'm going to go ahead and apply the matte medium and just use a regular brush to kind of move that around. And then I'm going to purposely crinkle that up a whole lot and make it just look, I just really love that beautiful texture that creates. And I didn't show the final assembly for a lot of the cards just because there's 7 of them and this video is already a little bit long. But I did try to find the names of these stamp sets. They're Vicki Boutin stamp sets. But I didn't see any name on the packaging indicating what these were. I probably bought these a couple of years ago and I've never used them. So a lot of the stuff that I'm using in this video is just stuff that I pulled that I haven't used ever after purchasing. And so I thought it would be great to use. So this one's another Vicki Boutin stamp set, the kind of feathers and the chains. So these are the completed cards for the first set of tissue paper that I did. This is a Tim Holtz stamp set right here. I think it came in a package though, like with a die set or something like that. So I really love how that blue or turquoise color shows through against the brown. So I'm going to go ahead and grab these Color Bursts by Ken Oliver. And I wanted to mention too, this mat right here, I just got it from IKEA. I believe it's like a placemat or something. This thing is awesome. I have been trying to find a surface that I could use and that I could wipe up. And everything that I used didn't stain this mat at all. It all wiped up very nicely. And so I just wanted to mention that. I really love it. And so I went ahead and I put the Ken Oliver powders down and activated that with water. And then I just took a brush and kind of moved the color around. I also added a little bit of splatter. And initially I just set the tissue paper over the wet medium and then let it just soak up, just tapping it with my fingers a little bit to get some of those other areas. When I let this dry, I go ahead and I pull it up and I flip it over to the opposite side. It doesn't really make a difference because it's wet on both sides because it is tissue paper, but it dries really quickly because it is such a thin paper. I use these pieces in little areas on some of the cards, but not in full cards, but I just wanted to show the process with the powders as well as stamping those up. Next I'm grabbing some Distress Spray, and this is Picked Raspberry, Seedless Preserves, and Salvage Patina. And I'm just going to spray these down one right after the other. On the first panel of tissue paper that I did at the beginning of the video that I forgot to include, I did the kind of turquoise color in the middle, and then I put the brown around the outside. And that overspray from the spray makes some really, really pretty kind of little dots like splattery on the edges of where the main color is. I just love the way that looks. I got that effect on that first tissue paper sample as well. And so I'll just pull that up and flip that over. I do end up using the extra just to wipe on cards so that I didn't waste it. So for this card, I'm using an old Ink Road Stamps, I believe that's the name of the company, set. I don't think that's any longer available. And there's one stamp in it that is just two circles kind of off center of each other. And so I'm going to use that on the entire piece of tissue paper. And I'm going to take my VersaFine Clair and Nocturne, and I am just putting little rows of these circles. If you don't have a circle stamp, you can always just draw in a set of circles or however you want to do it. And the next stamp set that I'm using is from Woodware. It's called Doodle, Plants and Things. And I'm just using the very top portion of those stamps, and in some of the circles stamping in several of the different variations of those flowers. And that's pretty much it. I'm going to cut this down and create 2 cards with this. And to adhere this one, I go ahead and I use some of this regular matte gel from Golden. And my bottle is almost gone and it's getting kind of old, and I'm afraid it's going to be unusable. And so I got that out, and actually I like the way that worked a little bit better than the matte medium. But I went ahead and I assembled the cards using that same Woodware stamp set again. The sentiment strips are from one of the Tim Holtz stamp and stencil sets that is available at Joann's. And I also used one of those stencils in that set to add a little bit of paper paste to create the X's and a little bit more texture on that card. For the next panel of tissue paper, I'm experimenting a little bit with this sheer shimmer spray. And so I applied that to my surface and then used a little bit of water as well. And this didn't turn out as well as I had hoped it would. So after I add that, I went ahead and I added a little bit of the Starry Nights watercolor to add different splatters of gold. And I was really hoping, it is very subtle. So if in person it looks okay, I think it looks pretty, but it's kind of hard to capture that on camera. And I didn't really know what I wanted to put for the background, so I grabbed my stack of backgrounds that were rejected at some point for whatever reason. I'm sure we all have our stacks of backgrounds that we kind of pull out every once in a while to use the panels, or maybe use just a small portion of them. But I try and keep most of them unless I just really hate them. And so I went through that, and I am going to use one of those backgrounds, but I do decide for the second card, using this piece of tissue paper, to use a piece of 12 by 12 paper. I really like the kind of vintage floral look of that first piece of pattern paper. I also like the doodle look of that, but I ended up going with this kind of a tone on tone, I guess, look with the tan flowers, and I'm going to put that behind my tissue paper. So I took a piece of cardstock and I used an embossing folder to create those embossed lines. And I wanted to create a little bit of shadow around the floral, and so I'm taking it's a Derwent graphite pencil. It is water soluble, and so, or similar to what a watercolor pencil would, how that would work. And then I'm going to take the matte medium and I'm going to place that on top of the flower, and then I will put the tissue paper on top of that, so it's only going to be adhered, the tissue paper will only be adhered to that flower portion. And then I'm going to rip around the edges. I kind of questioned that decision, but after it's done, it's done. And so I went ahead and I ripped around the edges so that I think I wanted more of the embossed, the texture from the embossed background to show, and I think that's why I did that. And then I'm going to splatter a little bit more gold on that card. And for these cards, for a lot of the sentiments, I used several of the different booklets of the Tim Holtz stickers. And so I did that with this card. I used one of the little number stickers, as well as that every road should have a path. I used this acetate butterfly from Tim Holtz as well. And that completes that card. For the last card, I am using that other portion of the same piece of tissue paper. And I don't know if this is an alcohol ink background. I don't think it is, because the color kind of comes up when I put that gel on. But it is a background that I had in my stash of backgrounds, and I went ahead and used that, and of course splattered more gold on there. And hopefully you can see that a little bit. I'll go ahead and trim this card down, and I am using a leftover piece from a card. This is a visible image stencil that I have colored and cut out. If you remember, about 2 weeks ago or so, I had used this stencil on another project, and so this was one of the other pieces that I used that I didn't end up, or that I created that I didn't end up using, and I thought it matched really well with the background, so I went ahead and cut it out. I popped up some of those little petals with double foam circles, and again use those Tim Holtz stickers. And that is it. That is my video for today. I didn't mean to make so many cards, and so I apologize that it's a little bit longer than my other videos, but I hope you enjoyed this super fun process. As always, if you liked this video or found it informative, please go ahead and give me a thumbs up. Thanks so much for stopping by and spending some time with me today, and I hope to see you next time.